Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
I'm Egbert, the owner of this station. Check out my website at egbert.com. That's E-G-G-B-U-R-T, egbert.com. Now it's back to Brad and John. Check out their website at bjshow.co. The BJ Show? Come on, guys. Anyway, here's B and J.
And that is who we are. He is John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. I'm Brad. As we've determined recently, I'm the straight man that sets up John for all the jokes, right?
You are definitely a straight man. Hey, can I quibble with something you said?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me quibble with something very briefly. You mentioned that after getting out of the hospital, Brad, you said that you were unproductive. Yeah. This is where I quibble with you. You know that the most productive thing you can do sometimes is to let your body heal and rest. You know that, right?
Well, I'm a guy who's trying to get things done. I got a lot of on my plate, a lot of projects working in these radio stations a little bit. And I guess I'm that classical type A personality. It's, move, that kind of stuff. And
I do know that, but Brad, if one of your kids came to you and said, we're approaching Father's Day, if one of your kids came to you and said, Dad, I just got out of the hospital and I have a whole lot of things on my plate. I can't rest today. I got too much on my plate. You would say, hey, why don't you take an afternoon and let your body heal? That's all I'm saying to you, Brad. I refuse to let you punish yourself for being, quote, unproductive, unquote, when your body needs to rest and heal.
No, that's not what I would say. I would say to my kid, well, come over and help me cut the grass, and then we'll clean up the backyard. That's what I say. You don't want to just lay around and do nothing. Come on, you got to get some projects done. Okay, the Ira Glass thing. Okay, and once again, I'm going to look this up because you thought he was a really old guy. I don't think he's that old.
I thought he was dead.
No, he's not dead. I think he's like in his late 40s or early 50s.
Oh, God, that's practically dead. He's 65.
65. Okay.
That's practically dead.
There's an interesting story that, if I'm not mistaken, he's Jewish. And one of the stories I heard that he talked about the fact, and I'm not making fun of Jewish people, but Jewish people and their sons and daughters. It's no fact, it's no hidden secret that the Jewish mothers and fathers want their sons to grow up to be the sons and daughters to lawyers and doctors. I mean, would that be safe to say? They want them to have.
That's fair to say, for sure.
They're very, very, very driven people. And to the point, they want success. They want, they love education, degrees, JDs, MBAs, MDs, that kind of stuff. Okay?
You could say they want the best for their children is another way to put it.
Right.
Yeah, they want their children to succeed.
He told the story once about growing up, and he got into the radio business, and his dad just took him inside and said, that's a stupid idea. You're not going to make any money in that business. You need to get your CPA degree, or I don't know what I'll look it up, see if he does have a degree. It probably does. So he does this show, and is it WBEZ? No, that's Boston. I'll look it up. It's a station out of Chicago, and it's called This American Life. And normally what he does is he's like the moderator. Hi, this is Ira Glass. This week on This American Life. And he tells a little bit of the intro. Today we're going to be talking about blah, 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 blah. And then he hands it off to his people who actually do the interviews, and they go out and they interview people, and they're, doing that kind of stuff. This show, the entire show, was on people who were scared to death of Trump becoming the president again.
Oh, yeah. Now, is this an episode from 2016, I hope?
No, it was just,
oh,
it's a recent episode.
So you're saying people are freaking out about a man that's already been president and hasn't put people in gulags, but the second time around is going to be different.
See, John, that's what I find fascinating about this whole thing. Okay, love or hate Trump, okay? The last year of his presidency was not the best because the COVID thing hit and the wheels fell off, okay? But remember, you being the stock market guy, remember all the experts when Trump got elected, were they saying, oh my God, the stock market's
will crash.
It's going into the toilet. And then it became the Trump rally, where every day the stock market went up and up and up. And right, you're a stock market guy.
That's absolutely right. And critics would say it was because he had favorable economic policy and the fact that his team was obsessed with the market. But the bottom line is the market performed very well.
Well, partly because of the fact that this is like it's interesting because if you watch Mr. Wonderful, the guy from Shark Tank, he's been on TV quite a bit. And he makes some excellent points about the Trump trial with the crazy thing about how he got, he had to pay $475 million because he overvalued his property. Remember, the judge declared his property, Mar-a-Lago, worth $18 million.
That's right.
And here's the judge who knows everything, and people down there going like, $18 million maybe for a manhole cover, and because, there have been people that have said that Mar-a-Lago could go anywhere if it were on the block today. It could go for anywhere $500 million plus. $500 million plus. And here's what's his face. Okay, so the first segment of the show, Act 1, is this lady, can't remember her name, who was the press secretary for Melania Trump. And she's just ripping Melania Trump. Just ripping her apart. Terrible woman. She didn't care about anybody. And the other point was they said that during the entire presidential reign of Donald Trump, she didn't give one press conference. Okay? I'm thinking to myself, I say to that, BFD, because am I going to sit and watch a Jill Biden press conference or a Michelle Obama press conference or a Laura Bush press conference? No, I could care less what the first woman says.
Yeah. And we were all spoiled because Michelle Obama had that organic garden. And she did not, use non-organic. I was expecting that from Melania. I wanted some gardening tips, and I was a little disappointed.
But see, once again, we've talked about this before. Here you have a woman who speaks 5 languages, and you don't speak 5 languages by having a low IQ. And she was a very well-known fashion model, and very successful at that, and yet. How many covers of the fashion magazines was she on during her first ladyship, whatever? 0.
None. Yeah.
Not one single magazine will put her on the cover because she's Donald Trump's wife, okay? So this lady goes on, and the end of the segment, she's saying, in so many words, I'm afraid for my future. If Trump gets reelected, I know he's coming after me. I know he's going to make my life miserable. I know I'm probably going to end up in some camp somewhere, okay? Okay. Here's Act B, okay? Act B, and I'll give the guy's name. If my phone has stayed where it's supposed to have stayed. Damn it. I had it right here in front of me.
Is it Mike Carter?
No. Fred Wellman. Fred Wellman. Do you know who Fred Wellman is?
I know the name. Yeah, who is that, though?
Okay, he is in the Lincoln Project, and apparently he lives here in St. Louis. If you know what the Lincoln Project is, it's a bunch of these guys that hate Trump, and what's interesting is they're mainly Republicans, and in the course of this report, they said that the Lincoln Project has raised $80 million to spend on anti-Trump advertising and social media and the whole bit, okay? So Fred Wellman, they tell the story of Fred Wellman, and they talk about the fact that Fred Wellman, Wellman, lives in a suburb in St. Louis. That's what got my attention. I thought to myself, this is a local guy. And they had him, and they interviewed him. And he's talking about, I'm living sort of undercover, because of the fact that I know the Trump people are watching me. He talks about there's cars parked out in front of his house all the time.
Oh, right.
I'm going okay, this is just insanity, weird crap stuff, okay? Just weird stuff.
Yeah.
And then he talks about, and the interviewer says, well, what's your background? Well, I'm a West Point graduate, and I was in the Army, and I'm blah, 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 blah. I did this, and I did that, and I'm, I have this, blah, 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 blah. And then he starts talking about, and then they go, well, what are you doing about the fact that you think that people are after you? Well, I sleep with and he mentions it. I always find this interesting because real gun guys don't do this. Real gun guys don't say.
You would never sleep. Yeah, I would never. I don't mean to steal the punchline, but I know what you're going to say, and people who respect guns would never do what you're about to say.
Well, he mentions, I have a Smith & Wesson equalizer next to my bedstand. Okay, that would be like saying, I have a, do you play golf? Yes, I use my Ping golf clubs. Once again, it's like real gun guys don't say that. Yeah, I got a 9. That's what most guys say. What kind is, oh, it's a Glock. It's a Glock 17 or it's a 19 or something like that, okay? So he goes on to talk about, yes, if Trump gets reelected, I know they will find me. I know they will hunt me down. And I'm going holy crap, this is getting unbelievable. The third guy in Act 3, the third guy, Act 3, is this Alex Vindman. You know who Alex Vindman is?
No, I don't.
Alex Vindman was in the Army at the time, and he was assigned to the White House. This is the guy that was in the room when Trump made the phone call to Mr. Ukraine, and the whole first impeachment was about this phone call that Donald Trump made.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and once again, Alex, if you know the interesting story, Alex Vindman tells his life story. His father emigrated from Russia because they didn't like, and he's making all these comparisons. Well, I thought when my family lived in Russia that we were done with the government, controlling our lives, and if we don't say the proper things, the government's coming after us, and yada yada. I'm going like, I don't believe what I'm hearing. And the interviewer says, and here's the thing. Okay. This was there are two salient points here that I thought to myself, I can't believe this guy's even bent out of shape about this. He's the guy who was the whistleblower who went to the congressional committee and says, I sat in on this phone call, and Trump said to the president of Ukraine that he wants to get the goods on Hunter Biden. Now, let's go back just a minute. That there's a very famous interview when at the time Vice President President Joe Biden was interviewed after coming back from a trip to Ukraine. Do you remember this crazy interview?
I don't remember this. No.
Well, you do remember it when I tell you what he said. He's interviewed by the press. And he says, well, I told the president of Ukraine that he should get rid of that prosecuting attorney because if he doesn't, I'm going to hold up $1 billion worth of aid. Remember that?
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Okay. So what he's saying is, and the reason that he wanted to get rid of the prosecuting attorney in Ukraine was they were going after Hunter and his buddies. That's why they were going. That's why he wanted this guy thrown out. Okay. So this Vindman guy says that after the trial was over and Trump wasn't impeached, he got reassigned. And he was no longer in the White House. And instead, he got moved to a new historical landmark or something like that for the Army, which wasn't even built yet. And I'm going like, okay, they could have sent him to South Korea. They could have sent him to Syria. They could have sent him to, the North Pole. You know what I mean? And he's essentially what they did was they got him out of the White House. Now, John, you're a corporate guy, okay? When you got somebody in your midst who is a pot stirrer and has caused problems, and what do? You do one of two things. You either fire him or you reassign him, right? Yeah,
you get them in a place where they can do little damage or where they are set up to fail. Put them in a place where they're set up to fail, and then you can point to their disappointing metrics and then fire them.
Well, essentially, we got a cush job, and he's complaining about that. So he talks about how he lived in Virginia, and they're interviewing at his home, and they talk about he has a very beautiful home in southern Florida. They don't say exactly where they don't want to give out the location. So I had this beautiful home in southern Florida. But the interviewer says, well, I noticed something interesting. You don't have any furniture. And guess what his response was?
What's that?
We don't have any furniture because we have to be able to move very quickly. Because if Trump becomes the president, he will come at us, and we have to be able to move on a moment's notice. And I'm going like, these are all nutbags. Okay, by this point of the show, this segment ran, and once again, this is radio BS. The first segment, the way NPR works, they have their news at the top of the hour. The show starts at like 5 or 6 minutes after the top of the hour. Then they run like 3 15-minute segments. So we're up to about the last 7 or 8 minutes of the show. So the same lady who's doing this whole report, she goes to a Trump rally, and she starts interviewing Trump supporters. And she starts saying, do you think that Trump is going to throw people in jail who don't agree with him? And everybody's look there like, what are you talking about? We don't care about it. We don't even think that's going to happen. We just want Trump to run the country the way he did before. And she interviewed all these Trump supporters, and not one of them, when she was baiting them with, well, aren't you afraid that there be people who are not in favor of Donald Trump will be, they'll disappear and they'll be thrown in gulags and things? And they all went like, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, to the point where they were like, well, it didn't happen before. Why would it happen now again?
Yeah, you're exactly right.
I don't know. And once again,
go ahead, Brett.
Well, no, go ahead. You got.
I was going to say, and I just looked up this Fred Wellman guy, and it looks like Tony Messenger wrote a column about this Wellman guy a couple years ago. Maybe that's why his name rang a bell. But at the risk of seeming like I'm making fun of these folks, which I'm not, at a certain point, if you think that Donald Trump has people outside of your house in suburban St. Louis watching you and tracking you, that's time to talk to a mental health professional. That's time to talk to somebody and say, I'm feeling a lot of paranoia. I'm feeling a lot of generalized anxiety. I'm not sure what's going on. Like, I need help. If you really believe that, and if we take this guy at face value and say that he's not just trying to incite people, he needs help. Like, if you think that President Trump has people hunting you down, you need help, Brad.
Well, John, I couldn't agree with you more. And the interesting thing for me is normally when you listen to Ira Glass, This American Life, it's always something interesting story. There's always some twist. A lot of times is small guy does good, and a lot of times is it's one of these bizarre stories that there's 14 things that come together to create one particular incident, or 10 people who don't even know each other ultimately end up saving somebody's life. I mean it's
a convergence, a strange convergence.
Right, it's that kind of stuff. And to me, this was okay, this is Donald Trump hit piece. And I think the thing that's so sad to me about this is there are some people that are going to go, oh, my God, they may be right. If we reelect Donald Trump, he's got his hit squad. And how many times have you heard the name Trump and Hitler mentioned in the same sentence? And go back and read. Go back and read the history of the Third Reich. And, and the crazy part of it is Donald Trump, his daughter, converted to Judaism. His 2 or 3 grandsons or grandkids, I don't know if they're boys or girls, are Jewish. His son-in-law is Jewish. Donald Trump worked in New York with the bankers and the brokers and the real estate people who there's quite a few of them are Jewish. We're not talking about a guy.
But that doesn't matter, Brad, because what the other side has is fear. And our side, if we call it our side, even if you think Trump is flawed, we have basic economic facts. We have inflation. We have all these rational things. And the other side has a fear factor of what happens if that man gets back in the White House. What happens if Trump, hey, they're going to throw us in gulags.
I just think, once again, it makes me want to take my journalism degree, put some lighter fluid on it, throw a match on it and go, you know what? It was fun once upon a time.
Yeah. Or you can choose to say, Brad, I learned journalism at a time when journalists were journalists and not content creators.
Well, I mean, and to me, once again, I say this, I'm not a guy to the point where, you don't know the history of the mouth when we had it with Brian Nieves and stuff like that. I'm the guy that if the Democrats came after me, which they did because I had Brian Nieves on the show, I would say to them, hey, come on the show with Brian. Oh, I'm not doing that. Well, here, how about we do a show an hour after you can come on the air every day and dispute everything Brian said in the hour before? Oh, I'm not doing that.
They didn't want it.
They didn't want it. I go, okay, what they wanted to hush Brian Nieves. They wanted his voice to be killed. Not killed, that's a bad word, but they wanted his voice to be muted. They didn't want him to be on the radio. And to me, it's to the point where I find this fascinating and the interesting thing about it is there's certain people that I have some issues with. I'll give you a perfect example. If I were called to Tracy Ellis today, I've got her phone number right on my phone. Hey, Tracy, why don't you come on the air with me tomorrow? She goes, no, I'm not going to do that. Why not? Well, I don't like you. You're a rhino. You're a blah, 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 blah. But yet, and then I turn around and I said, Tracy, you're a kino. You're a Christian in name only because Jesus, what would Jesus do? Would Jesus say, yeah, Brad, I'll go on your show. I don't have any problem. I don't have a problem. I don't agree with everything you say, but I'll come on your show. And you know what? You and I will sit and talk and we'll have a good time, right? Am I wrong on that?
I think Jesus would head both to see you in the hospital. I think he would go to the crap transmitter, and I think he would step boldly into Brian Nieves' Patriot Enclave, and he would be friends with everyone, Brad, and he would demonstrate his word by deed and not just by by his verbal actions.
Thank you, John. I'm not an expert at this, but I am a reverend. I'm a pastor. I really am.
Yes, you are.
I really am. And I'm not very good at it, but I know the basic precepts. And the basic precepts is, and correct me if I'm wrong or not, that we are not to judge, that we are to essentially look at everyone as a human being. We're not supposed to say, well, I'm not going to talk to him because he wears pink shirts, or whatever it is,
Well, yeah, I mean, pink is a little sus, as the kids would say. Now, I know that quote from you because as a subscriber to your OnlyFans, I actually watched you, Brad, in the hospital read yourself your own last rites yesterday.
Oh, that was Monday. At one point, I was reading my own last rites. Okay. Week went long. Thank you for enduring my stupid rant, John. But,
Of course, Brad. Hey, at this age, you never know how many of these I'm going to get.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?